guys, and welcome back to another edition of the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. I am Ray Russell, and this week, well, we're going to dive back into time, back into the mid to late 1980s. Bob going to talk just a little bit about the uprising global wrestling promotion down there in Florida around that time period. We're going to talk to Bob about that and maybe answer a couple other questions here from the fans as well this week. So without any further ado, let's welcome back to the program the man himself. Here he is, Mr. Bob Roop.
Well, hello out there, ladies and gentlemen. If you're well, I hope you stay well. And I hope that after listening to us for a while, you'll feel even better. Ray has reassured me over the last year or so that there's not as many haters out there as I thought there might be, but I'm glad to know that. I think, you know what, Ray, I think that has a lot to do with you and your character. I think with your website and the excellence of the work that you do and the respect that you show for wrestling, I don't think that people would expect you to have anything to do with me if I was a bum. So I thank you for that.
Well, I don't want to be mutual admiration society here, Bob, but I think just getting your stories out there and being able to be, as long as over a year and a half now, we've been doing this, and people have gotten to know, I would say, the real Bob Roop, or, these stories have been circulating for decades now by certain people, and there was really no response. But not only did we respond to those in detail when we got to that part of your career, but in the interim, we've really just been covering your history and wrestling history and just having fun doing it. And I think like people have gotten to know, okay, maybe this guy's not as bad as he was made out to. Maybe he's just not some grumpy human being that's just looking to take the territories or whatever you want to say. So I think there's a lot more, and I've heard that over the years too, just at the conventions and things you've attended. Like, I can't believe how nice of a guy about, not that they thought you were going to be nasty or mean, just how approachable you are, because some wrestlers aren't as approachable as others, and they just how friendly you are, I guess, is where I'm going with that. So I think that's really helped too. You coming out, doing some conventions, doing this podcast has really changed, hopefully, a lot of people's vision on the stories, the narratives that are out there. And I feel like we're going to continue to do that. Of course. This week, we're going to get into some really fun topics. And this is going to be a topic probably off and on for a while here moving forward for various reasons, Bob. And we'll get into that later in the show too. But I'm talking about in the mid to late 80s, an uprise promotion down there in the Florida, what was that? Boca Raton area, I guess it would have been, something like that.
That's where the main office was, yes, in Boca Raton, yes.
What we're talking about here is the Global Wrestling Alliance or Association. I don't even have my notes in front of me for this episode. We're kind of winging this one, Bob. I'm just going to go off of memory because I'm saving the good stuff because, like I told you, I'm working on it. I'm putting everything together. We're going to really tackle this from beginning to end, really deep dive into the talent and everything that went on from the top to the bottom over the next several weeks here with the Global Wrestling Company. But you had kind of mentioned how you fell into the group, happenstance running into old friend Boris Malenko, Larry Simon, at the gym, and the rest, as they say, was history, is kind of how you got involved from there. But let's take it from there. Talk to me about, we talked about you running into Boris Malenko and kind of being brought in as the booker of this promotion here. But tell us a little bit more about your early days with Global.
Well, I just have to make one comment first. Yeah. When you talked about us winging it, if we're winging it, you're like a carrier pigeon, and I'm like an old buzzard. So, please slow down and let me catch up, okay? Yeah, I ran into Larry Simon, the great Malenko, and it was weird in a way because he and I were the only two in this little gym. I was living in a little town outside of Tampa called Brandon, and it was a little, I'm not sure what it was, a YMCA or whatever, but I mean, it had, it was fairly small, but it had all the accoutrements. Larry Malenko was running the track, and I was doing something, and I saw him, and we had I think in the past I've discussed, we had a problem usually always over money, and it wasn't anything I personally did, but it was something I didn't do, which was insist that he get a share of money that was brought in, even though he'd had to remove himself from our efforts for a few months. He still deserved it. It's just I wasn't the one handing it out. So by the time I even knew he was, was mad about it, the money was gone. Anything to pay him with was gone. But he was civil enough. Let me go back a second. Something we talked about before. We were close. When we went to Japan together, we didn't sleep in the same room, but we worked out together every day. We ran on the street together every day. We talked on the bus. This is a guy who had all kinds of great experiences and memories and things to share. And Boris was a fun guy. He had a great sense of humor. And I loved him. And so we were really close, and it hurt me. I didn't know what to do except maybe I could have given him $1,000 of my own money, except at the time that I ran into him, I was near broke because I had taken off after losing the job with Florida, Championship Wrestling from Florida. I took off, and I found out real quick how fast. I found out how quickly life is so different when you're out of the bubble. We talked about that bubble a year or so ago.
Oh yeah.
And when you're out of that bubble, you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything. I could go out I talked in a past episode about being able to go to this little spring. Oh, it was like 30 yards across and maybe 40 yards long, but it was fresh water, clear. You could see all the way to the bottom. It was spring water coming up from underground, and it was, I won't say ice cold, but it was really cold. I would go over there and lay on a air mattress and take sun. You could be half in, half out of the water, and it was a nice way to relax. But I became amazed at how easy it was not to miss wrestling at all. Not to have to, when you're a wrestler, you're basically a slave to your career. We talked about it in the past and I'm not trying to knock the business or the boys or anything else, but I can knock the situation without getting personal about it at all. Everybody in every other organized sport, basketball, football, baseball, if someone gets hurt critically, they're taken care of, usually for life. I mean, their medical care, their everything, and given a stipend or whatever. I mean, there's been a few guys in football that broke their neck. They were paralyzed, and they're out for good. They're taken care of completely, and even brought back and commemorated for their past. Where in pro wrestling, you got hurt, you were out. No insurance, no medical insurance from your employer. And it was very difficult to get medical insurance from companies when they knew you were a pro wrestler because they wanted they wanted $1,000 a month for it or something like that. So medical insurance, because, you were given a chance to get hurt every night. So anyway, getting away from that feeling of having to do something every day, that became a very, very good feeling. And the only thing that started changing that feeling and was when my bank account started going down. My wife was working, but she wasn't making quite enough money to pay all the bills, and it wasn't fair for her anyway. She was doing what she wanted. She had a job she liked. She was running a medical clinic, but when I ran into Larry Simon, the great Malenko, what should we call him? Boris? What we should call him? Larry? What should we call him? Malenko?
I think it's interchangeable. We can call him. Well, we're going to have a lot of Malenkos on these next few episodes, so
that's true.
We'll stick with Boris or Larry Simon, whatever you prefer.
I always call him Larry because Jody, his sons Jody and Larry. Larry was just a first-rate guy, just a real gentleman in every way. And I mean, what a raconteur. He had some great stories and everything. Anyway, he was civil enough to come up to me when I approached him at the gym. I don't remember if we shook hands or not. I doubt it. I knew it. I could feel that he wasn't showing any signs of being thrilled to see me. But he did when I approached him, he did stop and he just said, "Hey, I'm working with a company down in South Florida. They need a booker." if you're looking, if you're interested, go down there and check it out. And so he gave me Mike Brannon's number, Dr. Red Roberts. He gave me his phone number, and then I got to see Larry a lot because he was a trainer down there. I got to see him a lot more often after that, and our relationship, it never got back to where I wished it could have, but it did get better. Time does heal wounds and whatever, and he was the last guy in the world. There's so many, really, in every profession, not just wrestling, but in every profession. And I'm sure all of you out there listening have one or two or three, or hopefully no more than that in your own life. People that are just really buttheads. They're just not really, they're not really good people. They don't care about anybody but themselves, and they don't care about you and your rights and feelings and whatever. Hopefully, I hope a lot of you don't have any, but unfortunately, that's not the case. In the land of the free and the home of the brave, there's a lot of people who feel free to be brave and insult people who could, tear them in half with one arm tied behind their back because we live in a country with laws. But anyway, I had just just before you and I hooked up today, I called my old buddy, longtime and still a dear friend I love dearly, Mike Brannon, Dr. Red Roberts. I still call him Red because that's how I met him, was as Dr. Red Roberts. And I've just always called him Red. So I had a couple of questions to pique my memory, and we were laughing about a couple of things. But one of the things I asked him, we had never met before I went down there to apply for a job. So when I went down to Boca Raton to apply for a job, this company owned, it was called Integrated Business, and it had a whole, I think, 2 floors, top 2 floors of this one building. They had 14 companies that they backed, that they were all but 3 of them were companies that they had started by issuing penny stocks, putting them on the stock market at penny stocks where you could start buying at a penny. And of course, as soon as people started buying, the price went up. Mm-hmm. Well, the Global Wrestling Alliance was one of those. And when they started, they raised $800,000 to start the wrestling company.
Wow.
They'd been in business about a year by the time I got there. And one of the things I found out fairly quickly was that in order to get their first 2 TV tapes that they made, they spent $150,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an 80s money, by the way, guys.
Yes. It's just unbelievable. And that's one of the things I asked him. Well, let me go back to the first meeting. All these guys in this company were suits. They all wore suits and ties every day. They were executives. And Mike Brannon, Dr. Red Roberts, he was a doctor by this time, a PhD, psychologist, and he had a suit and tie on too. I walked in with cut off Bermuda shorts. They weren't even regular Bermudas; they were cutoffs, a tank top, and shower shoes. Entered this board. It's a boardroom. They got this long, looked like mahogany table, 25 feet long. And there's 5 guys sitting at the other end of it. I'd seen a picture of Red, so I knew who he was. I had never seen any of these other guys before. Well, I sat down at the far end. I didn't feel comfortable getting anywhere near these guys. So I'm sitting about 25 feet away. And I just asked Red about 15 minutes ago. I said, what did you tell those guys before that first interview? What did you tell them about me? He said, oh, I talked you up. He said, I talked about you being an Olympian, about all your experience as a booker and all these different things. And he said, yeah, I bet they got a surprise when I walked in. He said, yeah. He said they were expecting somebody like Buddy Rogers. And I don't know if you knew Buddy Rogers personally or very well, but when Buddy went out in public, he always looked like $1 million. Right. He had on like a it was in the evening. He always had a beautiful suit, a nice watch, a ring.
Nice.
His hair
Always
was
had that
always
nice tan all the way to the end. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
He was a class act, and he was a class act man too. The man I met was a really really good guy. So that was what they were expecting. And also I'd let my hair grow. It was down to my shoulders. And then who walks in? Look like the abominable snowman or somebody. So I'm sitting down at the far end of the table, and Brett asked me a couple of questions, and I don't know what they was like. I don't remember what they were. But I just asked him, one of the things I asked him is, do you have any TV made? And they said, yeah. And the president, I'm not going to even mention any names, even though I remember them. I've tried to forget them. But the guy in charge says, yes, we've already made 2. Now, they've been in business a year. He's talking like they made Gone with the Wind and Ben-Hur or something, instead of 2 hours of wrestling TV. And I said, well, how much did you spend to make those 2 tapes? We made them for it was about $150,000. And they said this like it was a good thing. And I'm looking at them, I thought maybe they were kidding. And I wanted to say, I've never met any of these guys before, including Red. I didn't even talk to Red on the phone. Well, I did when I called him, but I mean, not enough to know him very well.
Right, at length, I get you.
At length and all. So I looked at him and I said, you spent $150,000 for 2 hours of wrestling. And they said, yeah. I said, I can make you 75 hours of wrestling for that same amount. And they looked at me like, you guys. I said, there's a way to make TV that can be very expensive, or you can be very economical. And most wrestling promotions, they're very economical about the way they make their television shows. What they had been doing was they had been making it like a movie. They would film a little bit, then they would stop. Well, when you stop, all the machines that are involved in that camera working, there's about 10 machines back there that all have to be coordinated. And when you stop, they all have to be reset. And that always takes, at least 15, 20 minutes, sometimes more. And the going rate probably, these guys hired a great big venue down there to do these shows in. And they probably were paying, I don't know, maybe 10 grand for the building for that one night. And the TV itself, once we started going to the studio, the TV was $250 an hour. So if they took an hour, just an hour, like to get warmed up and ready to go, get you ready for you to start doing your business, you've already spent $250 before you've done anything. So when they went and they made those first 2 tapes, they would stop, every time. So it might have taken them 2 or 3 days to make those 2 tapes. Anyway, I didn't give them chapter and verse. They offered me a salary, and I took it, and that was basically the end of the meeting. I didn't need to go into any more detail. But Brad and I were talking about it a minute ago. We found out that what we both understood and have come to understand was that suits and the wrestling business just do not mix.
No.
You just can't get them on the same page. I'm not sure that the wrestling people, Red was the suit himself in terms of being a psychologist. I'm not sure you can get, he had a foot in both camps in a way, but I'm not sure you can get the wrestlers to really understand the way a suit thinks. And I'm pretty sure you can never get a suit to think the way a wrestler thinks, because wrestlers think weird or different. Yeah. Our values are very different from most. And the very fact of our, I don't want to say bondage, because I'm sounding like I'm knocking the business, but being in that bubble wasn't that you and I talked about it like, that bubble wasn't always a great place to be in. There's a lot of times there there might have been a little water in the bottom with a couple sharks in it. But anyway, yeah, that was the start. And after that, what I was hired for, now listen to this, I was hired as the president of the Global Wrestling Academy, which is, of course, a wrestling school, and the vice president of the Global Wrestling Alliance. Red was already the president of the Global Wrestling Alliance. He became vice president of the Global Wrestling Academy. So we were both executives, you know. Well, that's what executive is, somebody who executes things, you know, makes a plan of action of business or whatever it is you're doing, and then acts on it, executes those ideas.
Right.
So yeah, we were executives for the first time in my life. You know, I was in my 40s, and I hated wearing suits, but you know, it was worth it for this. And we didn't wear them in our office. In fact, we had a Miss Pac-Man. We even had a Miss Pac-Man in our office where we needed to take a break. We go out and play Pac-Man for a half hour or so. So our office was 25 miles from Boca Raton, so we didn't have to worry about anybody dropping in on us. And they were scared to death of us anyway. I remember one incident when I was just getting to meet Red, and I liked the hell out of him because, first of all, I respected the hell out of him. You know, here's a guy more educated than I am, and I've been, you know, I got like 9 years of college under my belt. Here's a guy who's, you know, way more accomplished than I am in terms of like degrees and things, you know. So I had all kinds of respect for him, but what he was doing, he was a heel, and he kept working heel. He was, I'm not saying green. He wasn't green. He knew what he was doing, but he would do things like, I mean, one time we were at a gas station, and I was pumping gas, and this old lady, oh, she had to be 85 or so. She's got a cane, and she's walking. I don't want you to hate Dr. Red. I'm telling you, he was acting his part. This old lady walked up in front of the car, and when she did, he honked the horn at her. Oh, she didn't fall down, thank God, but she did jump a little bit. And I was pumping gas, and I left the gas in the nozzle. I went and looked through the window at him like, what are you? You know, are you really? And what I finally figured out was that he was acting. We talked about it with the Road Warriors, that they would do their heel act everywhere.
Everywhere, right.
Everywhere, yeah, no matter where they were. And that's what he was doing. But I'm telling you, he had a way of doing it that was a little bit like Ox Baker, where it didn't totally offend you to the point of where you wanted to kill him. Right. Although I'm sure there might have been a few of them who did, but these suits up there at Boca Raton, what they had going, they had 3 companies that they owned. They had all the ownership, stock, or whatever and the other 11 companies in the conglomerate. One of them was like one of that safety thing for old people, a buzzer that if you fall down, you can call for help. You know, I can't remember. Yeah. Yeah, they had one of the companies was that. Ours was another. But anyway, there were 11 of them. They were all penny stock companies. That's how they got the funds to start them. And what would happen is if the company did well, that was great. You know, then they kept running. Everything was great. If they folded, they just start up another one. But what they were doing was they used those 3 companies that they owned. Every month, those 3 companies charged all those other 11 companies a total of about $10,000 each. 3,000 here, 3,500 here, another 3,500 here. Every month, they charged those companies for services that were mostly non-existent. You know, they were there for us to use if they were needed. Like, say we needed to have a program printed. Well, you wouldn't. I mean, you could go to a printer on the street, get it printed for a couple $100. Well, they were charging us $3,500 a month just to be prepared to print. That's what it was. It was a I don't want to say illegal. They were doing it legally, but they basically stealing money.
Certainly taking advantage of the situation.
Well, when 11 companies are paying you $10,000 a month, that's $110,000 a month that's going to those three companies. The stock in those companies goes way up too. And what would happen, what these guys would do, if say the Medical Alert Company stock went up, all of them had 100,000 shares of it. They got a nickel each. If that stock went up to say the $5 a share, they would sell theirs. So they were, they had a racket going that was very good for them, but it was very bad for us because every month we were getting charged $9,000, whether we made any money or not. We were making some with our wrestling school, but it was really hard to get shows. Mm-hmm. We needed to get. We got on TV. We got a TV station in Miami to air the show every week. And but it takes a while to get guys over. One of the things we decided to do early on, I still had all kinds of I don't want to say hard feelings, but when I thought of Gordon Solie, my last memories of him was smirking at me when he knew I was fired. Him and Mike Graham and Buddy Colt all looking at me they kind of nodding their head and smirking like, yeah, you're dead meat, buddy. You just don't know it. Those are my last memories of Gordon. But I'm thinking of the good of the company. So I'm thinking, I asked Red. Again, we've only known each other a month or two now. Mm-hmm. But we're together every day, so I'm getting to know him. And I liked him right away. I knew right away he was a good man. And so I could be completely open with him and everything. So I said, we don't have any stars as our wrestlers. We're going to have to create them. Because, for example, the Samoans, Athensika, had just done a run with McMahon in New York. And I called them and asked them how much, what would they charge to, come down and just do get on TV and do a show with us. They wanted $2,500 a piece. Well, what? 2,500.
Well, that's pretty steep in any. You're looking at back in that period. You're talking about almost $10,000 today.
Yeah. Well, they were hot and they were taking advantage of it, and I don't blame them. Now, and again, this is no knock. I have all the admiration in the world for Samoan people, their culture, everything about them. Samoan people are known for being tough, and they are. I'd rather mess with two Alaskans than one Samoan. But anyway, a year or so later, I somehow got in touch. We got in touch, and their price was down to like 500 or something like that. They had found out that the market for the market for the 2,500 or 3,000 wasn't out there for them. So they came back to earth. And don't get me wrong, I wish them the best. I like those guys. I thought they were great. I wish the best for them. But we didn't have any stars, and I said, why don't I go see if I can get Gordon Solie to be our commentator and be our announcer. And Red, I hadn't said anything to Red about it. I had never dissed Gordon to him. I had never said Gordon Solie is this or that.
Right.
I just, I said, so I called Gordon. I had to drive from Miami. We lived in a little town called Davie, which is in a little township in the middle of Fort Lauderdale. Great little community. They got a rodeo arena there. People ride horses on the street right in the middle of suburban Fort Lauderdale. It's just really cute. But so I called Gordon and invited me up to his house for dinner. So I drove up there, and I think he was nervous because obviously he had been drinking, because during dinner, I'm sitting there with his wife. Her name was Smokey. Her first name is Smokey. And I was sitting there. We were having dinner, and I'm explaining to kind of Gordon what's going on. I could see he was a little bit wobbly. Now, all the times I've seen him drink, I never saw him wobble because usually when he drank, he was sitting down, and when he had enough, he would lay over on his side. I don't want to say pass out, go to sleep, whatever. He would, he wouldn't get up and walk. Let's put it this way. Well, he was wobbly when I got to his house, and I like it. It was in the evening. All you Gordon Solie fans out there, I'm not knocking. I'm telling these life stories as they happen.
Yeah.
Just
for reference too, real quick, Bob, I know, every time we go into a Gordon story here, a lot of times you're dealing with him from the business end, not as a fan watching him on TV. So you're telling these stories of what's happening behind the scenes with Gordon. And I know, you're constantly feeling like you have to defend yourself and explain why, because you're simply just stating facts and experiences and stories. But I do want to make it clear also, people can go check this out themselves all over online. Gordon worked with various announcers from Tony Schiavone to Chris Cruz who have made posts, again, much like yourself, not knocking Gordon at all, but explaining their experiences with him and, unfortunately his drinking problems that he clearly had, the alcoholism that got to him. Just this week on Facebook, Chris Cruz, who was an announcer there in WCW for quite a while, he wrote a very lengthy story about traveling with Gordon, Lance Russell, and Bob Caudle up and down the roads. They were like the below announcers of like a Jim Ross and things of that nature that was above them.
Wow.
And so he said it was his pleasure. He was the young guy driving those guys up and down the road, and he would talk about how they would have to stop, and Gordon knew every dry county, everywhere he could get a drink, everywhere he could go in and do this and that, and he would have to stop and let Gordon go do his thing real quick. And he would talk about at the shows how Gordon would function for 2 hours, then he would have to go up the street and have a couple drinks, and he could come back and work another 2 hours of TV. And so these stories are out there. And Chris said, I never got mad at him because I realized, I watched it happen. He was a functioning alcoholic. He needed that in order to live at that point. And this is WCW I'm talking about here by the, 89, 1990 timeframe. But so going back, this is not something new that's just, been put out there. We're not putting it out there for the first time. So I just want to, clarify that, like, you're not the only one telling these type of stories. Tony said that his deal, what Tony Schiavone would do whenever he had to work with Gordon, was he would bring him a bottle of vodka and orange juice to the show because he knew they were going to have a much better show if he just got Gordon going. Like, he just gave him, here you go, Gordon, let's have a great day, and kind of deal. So, these stories have been out there for quite a while now. But so just another, give a couple more examples of, what you're getting into here with what you're telling us.
Well, I'm really glad you told me that. I'm sad to hear it in a way, but I'm glad. And to your credit, we've talked about Gordon Solie many times, and this is the first time you brought this up, because it is negative about Gordon, that he's an alcoholic. Who wants to talk? Now, he's also in the Hall of Fame, and just about every place he ever worked, he's in the Hall of Fame as an announcer. So obviously he was great at what he did. We're talking about the man, the personal man, and for anybody out there who still feels aggrieved, what you can do is pay homage to Gordon and go buy his daughter's book. It's called The Solie Chronicles. Help her out by buying the book and you'll read about some of the things that we're talking about, that he started drinking at 11 o'clock in the morning. He smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day. He didn't make that stuff up, and who wants to talk about it? But in this case, these are things that happen.
Yeah.
And they're interesting to me because they're unusual. Like I say, let's go back to now dinner at Gordon's house. We're sitting at his, it's not a living room. It's kind of a kitchen, half kitchenette, half dinette. Nice house. His wife was a wonderful person. In fact, interestingly enough, when I was drinking heavy as a booker, my wife and Smokey used to go to A to A together, trying to get help for me and Gordon. Now mine, I wasn't an alcoholic. I was stressed, but and it didn't take me 110 meetings of AA to find out I wasn't an alcoholic. It only took me one. Actually, it didn't take me any, because once I quit drinking, I didn't have any more urge to drink. I just said, I'm not drinking anymore. I got a ticket. I got a speeding ticket. It cost me $1,000. not speeding, DUI. Cost me $1,000, went on my record. I'm not going to drink again. So anyway, while we're having dinner, I'm trying to explain kind of what global is and everything, and I'm talking to Smokey, and Gordon, let's put it kindly, Gordon fell asleep and went clunk, his face down in his plate. And I don't know how more embarrassed a person can be than poor Smokey. I said, well, I tried to do all the old platitudes. Well, I couldn't make a joke like saying, boy, he got tired of me fast, didn't he? But, say, I'm sure he's had a long day and, he's probably a little nerve-wracking and all that. I had no idea at the time that he started drinking so early in the day, the 11 o'clock stuff. But, and again, his daughter is the one that brought these facts out. But anyway, that notwithstanding, we set up a deal. I don't remember exactly. I left fairly quickly, of course. I mean, what I said, I asked Smokey, I said, you want some help moving in somewhere? And she said, no, I can do it. And so, but thank you for offering and all that. And, it was embarrassing as hell for her, I'm sure. But, I went back, I set up, I said, I'd already made an arrangement with Gordon to come down to South Florida to meet Red and see if they could work out an arrangement. So, and again, I didn't go back. I didn't go down. I didn't poison the well. I didn't go down and poison the water with Red. I said he's gonna come down, and so Gordon came down, and Red and I had an office with two desks on it. In it, they were kind of catty corner to each other. One would be facing west, and the other one would be facing south, so that neither one of us had to turn completely around. We could just look sideways and be facing each other. Mm-hmm. And so I stayed in the room while he interviewed Gordon. I had some work I was doing, and he talked to Gordon for 15 minutes or so. And Gordon Solie that you see on TV. That's who he was there. That's who he was. He was the TV personality, Gordon Solie. That's who he was. And I had not poisoned the well at all. And Red came over to me, and one of the ways that he really got over with me, we're talking about a psychologist here.
Yeah. And
one of the most brilliant psychologists. I fortunately have not had to deal with a bunch of them personally, but I know about the field, and he's brilliant. He just came over. He was after Gordon left, he was kind of frowning, and he said, "I don't like him." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, yeah." And I didn't say anything more. I said, "Yeah, he can be a bit much, can he?" And Red got so over with me when he said that, because he showed me that he's a smart man. Because Gordon, the real Gordon, frankly, is not very likable. The one who passes out in the dinner and, embarrasses his wife and has to stop every couple of miles to get a beer, get some booze or whatever. Let's put it this way, maybe not unlikable or likable, but almost pitiful. It's hard to, you certainly can't respect it. So you have to, if you respect his ability as an announcer and all that, you let that carry over and say, okay, everybody's got their private life and all that. And, a lot of people have done things in their life they don't want anybody to know about. Unfortunately, with Gordon Solie, as you're going to find out here in a little while, or maybe somewhere down the line, he started his bad habits way too early in the day every day. As soon as he got up, he started, and with booze and cigarettes. And again, very well known. He used to have lunch at a club. There was a club where some of the writers for the sports writers for the Tampa Tribune, wish I could think of the name. Doesn't matter. But the top sports writers, they had a club they'd go to and get together and lunch and drink and whatever. And schmooze about sports and things. And, Gordon was in that range. He was in fact, he was more famous than those guys. They weren't on TV. He was a television celebrity. So one of the things, so we hired Gordon. He was going to be our announcer. We paid him $1,000 a week. He would come down once a month and do 4 shows. We'd do 4 shows. We leased a studio for the day. It was $10,000 for the day, and we would do 4 shows. We never stopped. It was like from air to tape. You never stopped the machine. I forget what it's called. Something to tape.
Live to tape?
But,
I don't know.
Yes, live to tape. There you go. We never stopped, because if you stopped, you had to, the $250 an hour. Now, the $10,000 was just for the building. We also had to pay the television people $250 an hour. So it was an expensive day, but you're getting 4 shows out of it. So now that took a lot of planning, and frankly, the last 2 shows, shows 3 and 4, weren't as good as shows 1 and 2, because I don't know why. The guys might have been tired or long day or whatever. It was hard to plan that far ahead, but that's the way we did it. The other job he had with us, and this is the one that was more important by far, he was to use his influence as the premier, in a way, the premier sports announcer in the state of Florida, to go out and go to. He knew station managers everywhere, the people who schedule television, who will accept a television show. He knew all of them over the state. So for them, it'd be an honor to meet him. He knew all these people. One of his jobs was to go and get us on. This was the critical one. The main reason we hired him was for him to go out and and work with these people. However he did it, I said, if you need to take them out, Red and I encouraged him. If you need to take them out to lunch and spend $100, $200, whatever, but talk to them and get us on. We need television everywhere. We need it in Jacksonville. We need it in Tampa. We needed it. We needed it everywhere. We had it in Miami and South Florida, but it didn't extend as far as. Well, it did extend into the Caribbean, as a matter of fact, because we did a show at South Caicos one time, based off the TV. But he was supposed to. One of his jobs was to get us on TV everywhere. Now, I'm condensing time things here. So, say a few months later, Red and I went up personally. We went up to Channel 44 in Tampa, not Tampa, in St. Petersburg. It had the range of most of the state of Florida, not the East Coast, but all the West Coast, all the way down to Miami. So you're talking Tampa and Sarasota. Their range. I'm not sure how far east they went, but I know they went all the way down to Miami. So if you could get on Channel 44, now you're going to have a bunch of towns that were going to be able to see your TV that you could start promoting. Well, Red and I went up there ourselves. We put on suits and all that, and we went and talked to the program director. Red is a brilliant linguist. I remember he fired a woman once, and she left the office smiling, which I couldn't believe it. He had such skill with words. Anyway, so he could talk to anybody, and I'm fairly conversant, so I didn't have to do a lot of talking. The station manager, we brought him a copy of our show, and we talked it up about our plan and all this. Now we're talking. He's being introduced to Dr. Red Roberts, or Dr. Michael Brannon, and Bob Roop, who he knows from television. I've been on TV there for many years myself.
Right.
So he's talking to 2 people that one that he knows has stature as a wrestler, and the other one is just a PA, as a psychiatrist. So the guy liked us. And now what he told us, the program director, that McMahon had 2 hours on every week
Yep.
on 44 that he was paying for, that he was paying $4,000 a week for each one. And I think those are the figures. It might have been 4,000 for both of them, but it doesn't matter. He was paying for it because McMahon was advertising all his own stuff. He was his Hogan dolls and all that stuff. He didn't need to sell the advertising time. He used it himself. All we had to sell with our show was the advertising time. And there's 12 minutes of advertising time with every hour of TV is 48 minutes and 50 seconds of airtime, and the rest is commercial time. We had that 12 minutes of commercial time to barter with, and we were willing to give all of it. So, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks went by, and I called the guy, the program director, and I said, well, what's up? I haven't heard anything. He said, I'm confused, Bob. He said, I liked your tape. He said, I watched your tape. I like you. You guys had some really creative stuff in there. We had a thing called At the Matches, which was a takeoff on Cisco Ebert at the movies. You remember that? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Well, Red came up with this stuff. He was brilliant. We had At the Matches where when we put these tapes out, people will see this. These tapes are going to come out.
Yep.
But I would be the baby face, Red would be the heel, and we would watch a wrestling clip of something that happened on our show and give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So we had that. We had another one. We had At the Matches. We had 2 or 3 others that were based on like popular shows on TV at the time that Red came up with that were, they were different. They were great. Anyway, the guy said, I like your show. I like the innovative little things that you've got on there that other people don't have. He said, but I'm confused. He said, I saw on your show that Gordon Solie was doing the announcing, right? I said, yeah. He said, well, is he still your announcer? I said, well, yeah, he is. He said, well, he was in here a week ago with Mike Graham and Steve Kern trying to get their TV show on the air.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And, oh, man, I couldn't, I could believe it. But I mean.
Wow, I had not heard that one before. Wow.
Oh, man. Oh, we're paying. The guy comes down for one day and takes home a check for $4,000. It's not only not trying to help get us, he hadn't gotten us on any other stations anywhere. Mm-hmm. We kept asking him. He said, well, I'm talking to him, and it takes such a process and all this. So I told Red, and we immediately confronted Gordon, got him in the boardroom, and asked him, and Gordon said, or Red asked him, I understand you're trying to get not our TV on the air, you're trying to get somebody else's TV on the air. You're Mike Graham and Steve Kern going to a station that we're trying to get. And Gordon tried to say, well, I was just scouting for you guys. I was just checking it out for you guys. He wouldn't look at either one of us looking down at the table. I was just scouting it out for you guys. And I didn't say much of anything. I said, well, were you ever going to tell us anything about it? Because you never said a word about it. All the scouting you were supposedly doing. Mm-hmm. And Red fired him on the spot. He said, get your stuff and get out. So, that's unfortunate. But, that's what happened. What are you going to say? I wasn't through with Gordon. Gordon's still in my future. So I have to work with him again.
Yeah, WCW.
So, we did have, he was a good announcer, and he was good at play-by-play. Now, when I did the play-by-play when he was announcing, I don't remember if I started doing it, but within a short while I did. I did the play-by. He was able to do it. He had all this stuff, these words, these things he'd made up. But, I had the background, and I could put my touch to it. Plus, I was one familiar face. People in Florida knew my face. So it would be helpful if, the first thing you see Gordon Solie and Bob Roop, you think, well, maybe whatever's on this program might be good. Now we
Well,
did have some.
before you continue on, I just want to admit, that's good logic. You don't have a lot of wrestling stars. You're building stars in the ring. So to have credibility on the well, Gordon Solie, the fans have been watching him for years. Everything he said was gospel as far as,
Yes.
the fans were concerned. So if he says this guy's good or he's putting it over, this must be of some sort of quality if Gordon Solie's involved. So it was a great idea to go and get someone like Gordon. He had been off TV, on TV over and over again in WCW. And it's just kind of funny, because my son's been continuing to watch WCW week to week. He's been binging it from, straight through. And we make it into early 93. Gordon hasn't been on TV in over a year. They come on there and they just do an interview with him. And you forgot how good he was. And then after not being on TV for a year or two, he comes on there and in a 3-minute little interview he does to put a match over for a pay-per-view. And you're like, wow. He made it better, so he was good at what he did. So to bring him, that is truly an asset for you guys. And of course, the territories were dying, so obviously Gordon needed that work anyway. And you, with your background, not just in pro wrestling, but in Florida, professional wrestling, there, championship wrestling from Florida. So that, I totally get where you're going there. It's like, well, these guys, it's got to be some form of credibility here with the stars, going on in the ring. And of course, we'll see the Malenkos and other guys trickle into the ring. So there will be some quality talent as the TV programs go on. But I'll let you go back to the story you were telling there. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I see what you were trying to achieve with you and Gordon on the screen.
You never have to think that you're cutting me off. I'm the one to tell you, hey, we need a secret word that means, hey, Bob, it's the hook. You need to shut up and get back somewhere back on what. I've forgotten what the original question was by now, Bob, but whatever it was, get back to it, will you?
Yeah,
so you don't ever have to say that. You can't cut me off. It's nice of you to be appropriate and cordial like that, but yeah, our discussions they should be open between you and me, as far as even with all our fans listening or whoever's listening. And don't get me wrong out there, I don't enjoy telling these stories about Gordon Solie. The guy is in the Hall of Fame in every category of announcing. I think he's in the WWE Hall of Fame, the WWF, the Announcers Hall of Fame. There's 4 or 5 of them because he was an absolutely A+ announcer, but he was about a C- person. And when I say that, how treacherous can you be when you're accepting money from one company and working directly against them for someone else?
And that goes back to the pro wrestling business, and it is pro wrestling. It is the carny thing to do. I'm not defending it by any means, but then we go back and I start thinking about, well, you tried to take San Francisco and you tried to do this in Knoxville. Well, Gordon Solie was getting paid by you to go and shop around Mike Graham and Steve Keirn's product at that time, and they were they were trying to do their own deal down there in Florida around that time. So it makes complete sense. But it's just something he did. I can't even be. Yes, on a business standpoint, if I'm Bob Roop or if I'm Red Roberts or anybody else involved, I'm extremely angry. But as a fan, just kind of talking about this in hindsight, I can't be mad at it because that's what a wrestling personality does, I guess. You could expect it, I guess I should say.
Man, what a telling statement that was. It's so true. But what a telling statement. Having been away from the business for so long, being with you has been the closest I've been in getting back to the business. I still don't watch it on TV. Raw is one of the top things on Netflix now. I might watch 5 seconds of it, but it's not that I hate it or anything. It's just I watched it for so long, it no longer holds any interest to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, to say that, and we talked a little bit earlier about the reference about how civilian life and suits and pro wrestling just never mix. They never speak in the same language. And what you're talking about there is the same. The code of the wrestling business was so weird. I don't think Ted Turner didn't understand it. When he bought out the wrestling company, he established a rank of executives, just like he had for the Atlanta Hawks, for his basketball team. He established, I don't know how many, a dozen executives, making $200,000-300,000 a year to help run this wrestling company.
And brought a guy in from Pizza Hut to run the wrestling. So
yes, and you don't need. And Bill Watts said it. You need about 3 people to run a wrestling company. Well, the wrestlers, of course.
Right.
But, and this goes back to a point you made. That bubble, what might have been a bubble, and from the outside you could pop it, but from the inside it was very difficult to get away from.
Yeah.
It was very difficult. If you took time, well, we talked about Hulk Hogan being afraid to take time off because if he was off 2 months, by the time he came back, McMahon might have made two new guys that now had a bigger name than Hulk, and Hulk was going to be looking up at something instead of being able to look down and being the top star in the world at the time. So, yeah, I mean, there's been so many books written about it, and the business is it's just really, 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 really weird business. I mentioned it earlier, but to think that a group of men, including Andre the Giant, people like that, some of the great big guys, some of the strong, super strong, superstar Billy Graham, Ken Patera, world-class weightlifter, all these guys, I mean, former Olympians, Olympic champions, people have been great in all walks of life. They all get into this system where they're subservient to the way the business works.
They basically, whether they realize it or not, they're adapting to their surroundings. So because we've seen people that wanted to become attorneys and doctors that came from teaching, in schools and things of that nature, and they all fall to, again, their surroundings. I mean, you either exist or you don't, and if you don't kind of adapt, for better or worse, you're never going to make it anywhere. Right.
Well, it was a heady experience. I mean, it was, it was all of a sudden you're on TV. We were talking about Hulk signing autographs at the last week. Signing autographs until the plane was getting ready to take off. I remember doing a show, doing TV one Saturday, and that night we worked in a West Virginia town for the first time. I'd never been in the town, really. And we flew there. I'm walking in the airport, and this person in the airport says, "Hey, Bob." And they had just watched the television.
Yeah.
That's how, I mean, it wasn't 100 people like it would have been with Hulk, but even one person saying, "Hey, Bob," yeah, the power of that TV. And once you become known and famous, I mean, it depends on who you are. It's kind of a nice feeling. If you're making a lot of money at the same time, even if you are getting shorted and, you're not being paid fairly, if you're making $1,500 or $2,000 a week, I mean, it's hard to say, well, okay, I should be making 3, but the only guy I ever heard to ever quit was the Stomper, Archie Goldie, and I don't know if you knew Archie or much about him. He had a different kind of temperament.
He was his own guy.
Yes, he was. He got paid one week, I think, $1,700, and it's still a story that's out there. He took it up to the office. He didn't ask any permission. He didn't ask Charlie Lay to let him know upstairs I'm coming up. He just walked up there and tore up the check and threw it. I still think he should have cashed it.
Well, yeah.
And maybe thrown $100 worth of pennies at him or something. But
an IOU maybe or something.
Yeah. But now Frankie Kane was smart enough that when he decked Roy Shire,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, Frankie still had his wrestling gear on and drove to the bank as fast as he could to get his check cashed before Roy woke up and canceled it.
Yeah.
So Frankie wasn't about to throw the money away. But the guys, they get used to it. They get used to the routine. Everybody else was doing it. And the guys in the car, the ones that are complaining about, we talked about this many times, especially early, guys always talking about getting screwed on payoffs. They kept coming back for more. They didn't quit. I always left. When they started, what would typically happen? Would promoters, Fritz von Erich did it, Shires did it, a couple others. They start experimenting with what you'll take.
Yeah.
They'll start, all of a sudden you start making less money. Or you get a house, like say when the Cow Palace went up and doubled, you don't get double your payoff. You get maybe a third more than you got when it was half full. And now it's sold out. Instead of you getting double, what if you got 1,000,
right?
So when it was half sold out, now it's sold out and you get 1,300 or 1,400. Well, when that crap happened, I always left. In some cases, maybe tried to take over a territory where I could pay myself. But that wasn't the reason. We all know about what happened in California, but yeah, it was the business was a weird environment to be in. But we're back. You want to go back to global?
Yeah, let's go back. I don't know if you have anything else on Gordon there, or if that was the end of Gordon. You're basically getting canned from Dr. Red, it sounds like. So Gordon's on his way out. I know he will pop up working for Ron Fuller after this in a, well, it was a short-lived territory. I think it was out of Knoxville, USA Championship Wrestling. I just assumed Gordon had left this Florida company to go work for Fuller because he was so buddy-buddy with Ron. But apparently he again, that's the first time I heard the story, that he was shopping around a rival promotion to the networks rather than the company he was working for, as he was getting paid by you guys. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's underhanded as it can be, but again, if you put it in a light, if you were put it in a light, say you're reviewing Nobel Prize winners, past and present, it would be an absolute aberration, a horror. When you're talking about the wrestling business, it's just business as usual. Oh, he was trying to screw you? What else is new? You know,
right.
Everybody does that. You guys, all of you, have been getting screwed for years on your payoffs, and you're all still working. So, what do you got? Why are you bothering to complain? It makes you a hypocrite, really. If you don't like it that much, quit. Quit doing it. Either go ahead and make a demand for a raise or quit. That was unfortunate.
Relive the glory days of Memphis wrestling with the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. Each week, we go back in time to review USWA Championship Wrestling from the 1990s, episode by episode. Join us for watch-alongs, behind-the-scenes stories, and exclusive interviews with people who were there and lived it. Whether you grew up watching it or you're discovering it for the first time, this podcast is your ringside seat to Memphis wrestling history. It's all a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Listen now at USWApodcast.com.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. But that's not all. You can also check out the Pro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puroresu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. And of course, now would be a fantastic time to become a WrestleCopia patron over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where you get so many gifts, including all of my insanely detailed show notes for every episode of The Grenade Show, Regional Wrestling, and the Monday Warfare podcast. You'll also get early access to a lot of the podcasts here on the WrestleCopia brand, where you can listen days and sometimes as much as a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. But that's still not all, guys. You also get at least a dozen digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure each and every month, plus random bonus video drops, and of course, the Patreon exclusive Watch Along series covering many past WWF and WCW events. And if that's not all, Videocasts, also now a part of Patreon. No subscription, cancel anytime. Give it a try for a month, guys. I think you'll like the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into paying the bills. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia. Help me pay some of the bills to keep the WrestleCopia podcast network and all of the great shows here up and running for the months and the years to come.
Hey, Bruiser buddies, I want you to listen to Wrestling Nostalgia with Dave Dynasty. Every week, he has the roughest and toughest interviews in the podcast world today, with the best guests you could ask for. There's no bums on this show. Let Dave Dynasty be your podcasting tag team partner and listen to Wrestling Nostalgia while drinking beer, smoking cigars, and busting heads. Just look it up on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe today, because the Bruiser said so.
We tried something with Global. We had a number of black wrestlers. We had Soul Patrol, and Soul Man
G.
Alex G.
Right.
The other two guys, my memory. Anyway, baby faces. And then we had Death Row, these two heels. Both these black men, the Death Row, were literally scary. Now, one of them, Rosie was a nice guy. But the other guy, James, he was a football player, I think, at Florida State. He was in that Butch Reed category.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and he was bigger. Yeah. So we did this little skit one time where we went down to a place in Miami that was notorious for bad things happening to people. It was a place where when people left the airport and they meant to go to Miami or whatever way they meant to go, there was a way out of the airport that was confusing, and you'd end up going the wrong way. You'd be going, say, toward Miami. Well, what most people would do, a lot of these people were foreign tourists, and or not a lot, but some of them, more than a few. What they would do is the first exit they'd come to, they would pull off. They would go to the first driveway that was available, pull in the driveway, back out, turn around, and go back, get back on the main highway to go back the other way.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was that as soon as it got noticed, people started laying low, hiding in the bushes around that driveway. That the people would turn around then, and when they they pulled in before they could turn around, somebody would block the car with I don't know, pull another car in behind them or throw, I don't know what they do, and basically hold the people up.
Yeah.
They give me some money or break your car or, and a lot of them, if they were foreign tourists, happened to have a lot of money. Anyway, that place became notorious for that kind of stuff. So we took two little outtakes. We took the Soul Patrol, again, 3 black guys, nice guys, good, and tough, 2 of them were great big guys. And we're walking, we took a film crew with us from the TV station we were airing our show. And we went down to this, what's the name of the town? Anyway, the town was so bad that there was a guy from there who was playing in the Super Bowl for Cincinnati or somebody. And some reporter asked him, "Are you going to go back home while you're here?" He said, "Hell no." He said, "It's too dangerous, man." He's talking about his own neighborhood. So because they were playing the Super Bowl in Miami that year. Anyway, Red and I are right behind the film crew, and there's two guys, one guy with the shoulder-held camera, another guy holding the tape box or whatever. They're nervous, a little nervous, because it is a bad, you can smell pot in the air. There wasn't anybody out on the street. The Soul Patrol is walking down the street. You talk about guys looking nervous. We tried to get her to walk down this back alley, but they looked down there. There's a couple of guys down there. Said, no, I think we'll stay on the street. Well, later on, we did the same thing, or maybe the same day. We took the Death Row, James and Rosie, and both these guys weighed about at least 320, and they had some pork on them, but they were big, big shoulders, big arms, and they looked like convicts. They had on the brown khaki.
The jumpsuit,
anyway.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, people see them in the future when I bring these tapes out. But we went down the alley with them, and there was about 6 or 7 guys down this alley smoking, talking, whatever. And they look up and they see James and Rosie coming down there, and they were told. I mean, they look. These guys looked bad, even when they were smiling. They looked like you didn't want to go anywhere near them. When they were frowning, you didn't want to be in the same state with these guys. Well, anyway, they're walking down this alley, and to watch the guys in the camera, I could see what was being filmed, and the camera, these guys in the alley, I saw these guys coming, and you talk about a bunch of, and I mean, there's about 8 or 9 guys in different places in the alley. Every one of them took off. I mean, they weren't running, but they took off before Death Row could get close enough to do anything to them. And then we just had the good fortune down at the end of an alley, we found an old wrecked car. It was a Cadillac that had just been left there. And they had no rubber on the tires or anything, so it was a wreck. Well, what we did, in fact, the hood was removed and the trunk was removed and all that. Well, what we did is we put all that stuff back on there, the hood and the trunk, and we had these guys rip it apart. We had them they ripped the hood off, they ripped the trunk off, they literally did rip the doors off, and to tear out the seats. Oh my God, we got that on tape. People are going to be seeing that. But oh my God, you talk about effective. They look like the last 2 guys in the world you'd want to mess with. Even if there are 4 or 5 of you. I'm sorry, guys, that's not enough. Go get another 8 or 10.
No, one of them, I believe the one you're referring to is Rosie, who is Wendell Rosier. He would go on to work off and on doing TV tapings for WCW 1990-91 timeframe as Death Row 3260, which was his number on the back of his jumpsuit. And,
great!
But he would basically out there to do jobs. But there was a match, and I don't know what went awry, but he was wrestling Mike Rotunda, who had came out of Syracuse and was a hell of an amateur wrestler, and he was not cooperating with Mike at all. And Bob, you know what happens when you don't cooperate with an amateur wrestler, and even don't matter how big you are. No. Mike takes him to the mat and has to lock him up into all sorts of different pretzel holds, and he kind of gets the win doing some kind of weird strike. He couldn't do a finish because there was no cooperation. I couldn't believe, but I should be able to believe it was WCW. But they actually air this match on television, the most awkward squash match you've ever seen in your life. But Rotunda basically ties him up and gets a pin out of it. But it's like I said, it's very awkward. But that's my memories of Death Row as a kid. But he would be in the magazines because they looked the part, So you would see them in the after mags and things like that because they look good on it's a visual. So there was definitely some of the guys. Now me being from Ohio, I never got to see them outside of the Death Row. One of them there in WCW. But as a kid, you got to see things like that in the magazines, and so I always wanted to see those guys, and so I'm looking forward to reviewing some of that with you.
Well, when we, I'm not sure yet in what form or venue we're going to use to show those global tapes, but we're going to do something.
Yes.
But those guys, those are fond memories because, when the Soul Patrol was so nervous, it made the camera crew nervous. I mean, they had like, I don't know, $10,000-$15,000 camera with them,
Right, yeah.
and the worst part of Miami that, everybody was avoiding going to, even the people that lived there were hiding, coming in the back door instead of the front. They were nervous as heck. Well, when Death Row came out, those guys relaxed quite a bit. The camera crew felt a lot more. And Red and I kept telling them, look, we're here with you guys. Nobody's going to steal a camera. Believe me, you're safe. Well, have you guys got guns? I said, no, we don't need them. I said, don't worry. Nobody's going to bother any of you guys. I mean, we had actually between us 7 people. I said that, with the Soul Patrol, the 3 of them, I assume those guys, if we got attacked, would come help us. I mean, maybe not, but you assume they would. Yeah, but when Death Row was out there, the camera crew felt very secure. And watching those guys that had kind of sneered, I remember what happened. The Soul Patrol, we wanted them to go down the alley, and they took a look down the alley, and what they saw down there was mixed. It was mixed. There was some black, some white, maybe an Asian or 2. There's a mixed crew down there in the alley. And there were people smoking dope and shooting, just shooting the craps. Guys playing dice. Like a big alley. It had like we'll say part of a wrecked car over here and some trash and whatever. But most of it was open alley. But it was like typical, alley fight. That's what we were talking about. Mm-hmm. Well, they didn't. They took a look at those guys waiting down there. They didn't want to go down there. They said, well, okay, it's okay if we walk down the street. I said, well, okay. Death Row, when they saw those guys down there, they actually stepped up their pace, hoping some of those guys would stick around, especially James. I mean, James was an intelligent. I know Rosie's gone. I'm not sure if James is or not, but he was an intelligent, very likable. He was quiet. He was a strong, silent type. Mm-hmm. But man, he was like Butch Reed, man. He was scary. You really, really wouldn't want him mad at you. If you wanted 2 guys on your side, Butch and Death Row, man. Oh, yeah, you would. You probably wouldn't be able to get anybody to fight you unless there was like 20 of them. Yeah, we had fun doing that. I forgot where I was.
Oh, we were just talking about some of the talent there. You were kind of talking about some of the ideas outside the box type of stuff here that really that's something you would, liken to something Vince McMahon would do later on, honestly, really in his vignettes and things of that nature. But you were kind of doing that back in the ICW world as well. Excuse me, even in Southeastern, I should say, in Knoxville. We talked about the box gimmick and you being inside of it and everything and all that other stuff. And you're kind of bringing that over here. But it sounds to me like, because you're giving me some of the ideas that Red was throwing at you too. It sounds to me like no wonder you guys got along so well. You both were thinking outside the box. What can we do to make us different and stick out? And, obviously filming vignettes was not something that a lot of the territory sure never did. And, the independents really didn't have the ideas or at least the wherewithal or maybe even the finances to go and shoot things like this for TV. But you guys being able to do something like that was pretty clever for the time, no doubt about it.
Well, there was a guy thank you. There was a famous newscaster, not Walter Cronkite, but he was well known. He'd been around a long time. He was on late at night. He had like a half hour. I can't think of the name of the show. We copied his show too. We used the same name, but made it a wrestling show.
And then Ted Koppel or something like that.
Yes. What was that thing he had? You remember what his show was called?
I don't know. Nightline, maybe? Nightline, was that it?
Yes. We had Fight Line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Red came up with Fight Line. Thank you. Hey, together, with my 1/4 brain and your 1 3/4 brain together, we got 2 brains. So
I'm just lucky to be a Gen Xer. I'm kind of like in between. I've experienced everything to some degree.
Yeah, Red came up with that. Fight Line. Yeah, we had at the matches, not at the movies. We had at the matches, and we had Fight Line, and I mean, the sincerest form of flattery is imitation, and these were successful programs. It was a way to spice up our show, and nobody was doing it yet like that. So that's what the program director from Channel 44, he mentioned that. He said, I like that. He said, I like those little special pieces you guys put in. Mm-hmm. Instead of just having wrestling match after wrestling match after wrestling match, you break it up, with some personal interest stuff. So, but to this day, I had the good fortune. We told our listeners that I got to go down to Fort Lauderdale a few weeks ago for the Smart Marks, a bunch of great guys who I'm going to mention every chance I get because they show more respect by pay. If they've had 100 and they paid Flair $5,000. If they've had 170 some guests, they had to have paid at least probably $300,000 to that many guests, and that's showing interest, my friend. When you're willing to spend money to get personal with a wrestler, right, and treat him to dinner, that's the ultimate in respect in my mind. So I love those guys. I respect the heck out of them, and they were not just nice to me. They were respectful too. Which I'm an old geezer now. Yeah, they were very nice. But one of the things that was good about that was I also got to see Red Roberts, Dr. Brannon. I got to spend 4 days with him, and Jody Simon came down from Tampa for a day. He took a day off from his work to come down. And so, yeah, one of the benefits of those times, like I said a little while ago, I called Red a couple minutes before we came on the air. I wanted to ask him about, and that's one thing we can also talk about. What I wanted to say was I made a lifelong friendship with Red, and those are rare. Think about it. All of you out there, think about it. That somebody that you have is a lifelong friend. If you've got one, you're lucky. If you've got two, you're blessed. If you've got more than that, you're obviously an excellent, wonderful person with extremely good luck. So my best wishes. I hope all of you have true friends. But I'm fortunate to have a few, Red being one of them. So going down there with the Smart Marks. But one of the things I asked them about this morning, we tried to start a black wrestling alliance because we had so many black guys on our card. I just talked about 5 of them with the Death Row and the Soul Patrol. They hired not a wrestler. We called him the Reverend James Jones. He was black, of course. We were modeling him after the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who was still a big name at that time, So we were going to start try to have a black wrestling alliance as part of the Global Wrestling Alliance. But the Suits had promised us when we got down to when we started getting down under a couple $100,000 left in the bank, what with our salaries and expenses and all that, you could see the end if things stayed the same. We wouldn't have much more than maybe a year to go. Well, they promised they were going to do another stock issue. They were going to do another issue of stock to raise more money to keep it going. Now, we had done what we were asked to do. We were on TV. We already had 30 shows in the can. We hadn't been able to run a lot of shows. We go sick, Gordon Solie, going back to not being able to. We didn't have the time. We didn't have the time to go ourselves, and also to call. Well, we were assuming that Gordon Solie was doing it. When I talked to him about it, and asked him about it. I mean, every month he came down. We'd ask him if he lined up any TVs yet. Oh, no, I'm working on it, though. I'm coming real close, you know. I got a couple that I think are interested, but yeah, he gives us that line every time. You know, after about 3 or 4 months, we should have figured it out because he hadn't signed up anybody. But, like, you know, hindsight's always 2020. We did get the Reverend James Jones, and we did a show in South Caicos. It did well. Maybe 1,000 people came. The ticket prices weren't real high, but you know we had to fly everybody over there. We had to pay for their air flight, of course, and back. Now, it wasn't real expensive. South Caicos is not that far from Miami, but figure every ticket was, I don't know, at least $300 round trip. So 15 wrestlers, that's $4,500 right there. So even if we drew $10,000, you also had to pay the guys. So and you had to rent the facility, and so there wasn't a lot of money left over. So we paid the guys. We paid them something like, I don't know, maybe $50 a piece. So we paid them that night because in cash, because we were on. In fact, we issued them checks, but we cashed it for them so they could go out and and we weren't leaving until our flight back wasn't until we were commercial. We weren't flying back till the next morning, so they could go out and have fun. You know, South Caicos is a Caribbean island. They could go out at night and go to the bars or wherever they want to go. I doubt if many of them are going to church, but they could go out and have some fun. So all the guys cashed their checks. We gave them the cash, and that later that evening, I'm not sure if we called the guy Reverend James Jones. I think we did. He came up to me and he complained. He complained about the payoffs. I couldn't believe it. Like I say, we paid him $50. He saw that big house and he was thinking, well, geez, we do $10,000. We should each get at least $500. I mean, geez, there's only 16 of us. You know, I didn't have the time to explain, all the ins and outs of how those things worked. But $50 actually was quite generous because we ended up with very little profit to put back into the company. But there's a funny story that came out of it. Red and I were always in difficulty with the suits up in Boca. We set up an office down there in Davie, say Fort Lauderdale to make it sound better. I believe it was inside Davie. We had a place that was big enough to put 2 rings. Had 3 offices and it had a front door and a receptionist desk and all that. Looked like a regular office. And in the back, we had a big room that had 2 wrestling rings in it. And then there's also a place where the back of the building had these garage type doors that you could lift up and back a truck up, which made it a lot easier to get ring in and out of there whenever we had to take a ring, like to go to a show or something. That's where we were set up. Well, Boca was like 25 miles away. They made us come up there. We got paid twice a month. They made us come up there to pick up our paychecks. I don't know why. I mean, to me, it was entirely disrespectful, but that was a deal. So we went along with it. And we had to drive up from doing our job. We had to drive up there to get our checks. And then, so one time, what happened was that there was the guy that was supposed to write the checks was the assistant treasurer, or what do you want to call him, the accountant. He was a little Haitian guy, but he was small. He was probably 110 pounds, and he had this habit of making us wait. We would show up. Now, Red and I are both presidents of companies that he's working for. I mean, that he's working as a subsidiary for.
Yeah.
And he'd make us wait and sit around sometimes for 15 minutes before he'd take our checks in to get signed by the accountant. And so about the second time it happened, I didn't know Red that well. About the second time that happened, Red went in there and he said, listen, I want to be respectful here, but I want you to understand, I'm the president one company and the vice president of another. The gentleman sitting out there is the president of one company and the vice president of another. And we're trying to be respectful here. Have we always shown you respect? And the guy said, well, yeah. He said, well, every time we come up here, for some reason, it takes 15 minutes for us to get a simple job, you taking 2 pieces of paper and going and getting them signed. And he said, now, again, well, I might be the president of one company and him the president of another. I don't need his help, but if you keep doing it, I'm going to wipe up the floor with you. Oh, my God. When I heard Red say that, I fell in love with it. I actually jumped up out of the chair. I couldn't believe it. I'm going to wipe up the floor with you. The little guy jumped up and ran into the accountant's office. He had to take a right out of his office. It was only about 10, 15 feet away. He dashed into the accountant's office, opened the door, ran in there, and Red was leisurely following behind him. I had to hear what was going on too, so I followed. So we all of us are in there. The guy said, "Oh, he threatened me," and I said, "No." I said, "Look, I heard everything it said. I didn't hear any threats made, but one thing that we're both concerned about that we we took the heat completely off Red or anything we did and we exited the so-called the guy that was holding us up. We made him invisible. We put all the heat on the accountant by saying, I did this one. I'm curious why it takes 15 minutes for us to get a check written. If you got to write 20 checks a day, you must have a heck of a long day. What's taking so long?" And the guy is haba, 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 because he's got 2 great big guys standing there in front of him. And his name was Chuck. We'll never forget that one. I had another opportunity with him, and this is where suits and wrestlers don't meet. My wife Molly was our receptionist, and Red hired her. She didn't even apply for the job, but he liked her, and she was very knowledgeable. She was good at stuff, and so made a good appearance, dressed well. She wasn't gorgeous. She's a beautiful, beautiful person. One day I'm in there, and I hear this Chuck. This is another example. I hear this Chuck. Now, we're on this, I said the top 2 floors. I think the top floor was the 8th floor. Chuck had a big plate glass window behind him. And I hear him talking on the phone, and he's rude as he can be, and blah, 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 blah. I realized he was talking to my wife. And when he hung up the phone, I said, "How would you like it if I took you and threw you out that window behind you? Because I'm thinking about it." He said, "Huh, what? Huh, what?" I said, "That's my wife you're talking to, man. What the hell's your problem?" I said, "You better be a lot more curious. If I hear from her that you're giving her that kind of talk anymore," I said, "I'll be back." Well, of course, now that got everybody. I mean, not everybody in the office heard it then, but they all heard it at conference or whatever. It got told all those wrestlers are what animals they are and everything. One time, this is the result of the South Caicos trip. Because we paid all those guys in cash, it was like $3,500. And it turned up somehow when the treasurer or the accountant got the money back, the $3,500, he had not remembered where he wrote that number. He came all the way down to our office. Oh, was he happy? Oh, he was so happy. I'm not surprised he didn't bring the other guy with him. They were convinced that they had caught me and Red stealing $3,500. They were sure of it. Oh, they were so happy. In case anybody out there hasn't grasped it yet, we weren't that popular with the suits. Although Red could talk to anybody and smooth anything over, and it was me who was, this big, strong, gorilla-looking guy that had more of the heat. But yeah, the guy came down, and I'm sitting off, and I knew we hadn't taken any money. I mean, neither one of us were we're thieves. So I'm sitting there. I have to listen to this guy. He's taking about half an hour of my time talking about this and this and this and this. And he's looking at the left-hand page of this big ledger he's got. It's one of those ones that's like 2 feet high and 1.5 feet wide. And on the other side, I'm looking at it upside down. On the other side, at the top of the page on the other side, is written a number. I can see it upside down. There's written a number 3,500. I just reached over and I pointed at it. I said, "What's that over there?" He looked over there at that. His face turned white. He slammed his book shut. He got up and almost ran out of the office because he'd been sitting there accusing me and Red. I was there alone with him. Red didn't need to mess with it. But he'd been sitting there basically accusing me of being a thief for a half hour. And it was his mistake. He forgot to notice that we had cashed checks for guys. So that was that's again, suits and wrestlers don't mix. But it was fun. I had fun watching his face when pointing out his mistake.
Stick it to somebody, especially when they're in the wrong, and hearing that and being so brash about it. And talk about having what they would used to call egg on your face, I guess, right? So, embarrassment there. Well, that's some of the backstage, behind the scenes stories. That's exactly what I wanted to open and get into this week on the program, was just kind of how things developed, how you guys came about putting together TV, how Gordon came about and his departure, and some of the other things going on behind the scenes with the suits. And these are stories that haven't been out there up until now. So these are definitely some new stories that we're breaking here as part of the Wrestling Stoop, and I'm sure we're going to have a ton more of those in the weeks to come. And we're going to begin dissecting some of the shows, having some fun, no doubt, with some of the angles, some of the matches. We can look back and laugh, and also to point out what was good, about the promotion and what you guys were trying to achieve with what the booking style that you guys were putting. Like you said, some of the things you put together, some different segments than what we're accustomed to than just regular, typical pro wrestling matches. And there are plenty of matches in between. There's a lot of guys that came through there, from Hector Guerrero to Norman Smiley was born there, basically. He was Lord Norman or something along those lines.
Right.
Joe and Dean Malenko. There's a lot of guys that, Rusty Brooks could. I always get a laugh out of Rusty. He was a big dude, but he could go for his size anyway.
Rusty was a good talent, man. He was, he wasn't cosmetically.
Appealing?
He was a great heel. It wasn't cosmetically appealing, but he was a terrific worker.
Oh yeah.
He could save anybody who could save a match when a match is really getting ready to go completely south. Rusty was one of those guys, and that's the guys that I consider being able to work. There were a lot of guys who could work a match, but if something went wrong, they couldn't adapt. They couldn't figure out a way to fix it.
And I'll say this about Rusty too. Hulk Hogan, I can count on one hand how many squash matches Hulk Hogan worked as the world champion. On one hand, I can count that. And I don't need all my fingers. Rusty Brooks was one of them. You have to think, for the Hulkster to agree, he felt the same way. Like, well, this guy's not going to make me look stupid out there. So Brooks was certainly a capable hand for sure.
Well, also the fact that Rusty was so big and heavy that, it would feature the Hulkster's strength.
Right.
To be able to, I don't know if he press slammed him before he did the leg drop or what the finish was, but yeah, and Rusty also knew where his bread was buttered. He was going to make Hulk look good.
Yeah.
He was going to do his job. He was going to do what was appropriate. Yeah, I always liked him. Thought a lot about him. Red and I, we had a lot of fun with Rusty, and sometimes at his expense, but sometimes at ours too.
He looked like he would be a fun guy to hang around for some time.
One of the great ribs, I'll just finish on this last. One of the great ribs that Red and I still rib about, and don't get me wrong, it's just that Rusty was balding. He was almost completely bald on top. Mm-hmm. He was blonde. He was, I'm dark. I was dark haired. What hair I had is dark, and our builds were similar in a sense, except he was a lot heavier. He was heavier than I was, and he was thicker through the middle than I was. But one day we were on an elevator, me and Red, and this woman with a little kid. He couldn't have been more than 4 years old or something like that. And he looked up at me and he said, aren't you Rusty Brooks? And Red fell down, actually fell down. No, he didn't. But he wanted to. He laughed. He laughed. And all these years I've been accusing him, I said, all right, I still need to know, where did you find that midget that you hired to say that to me? Yeah. It's still a running joke with us. I've got some others to share that I read as you're listening to this. Think about some of the other things we got to talk about. I love you, my friend, with all my heart. But
we're definitely going to hit a lot more on the character Dr. Red Roberts and some of the, again, outside the box thinking, the angles you guys worked on TV. I've seen some people recall some online. I've jotted down some notes for those. And other names going to come through here. Formerly Corporal Kirchner in the WWF, Colonel Kirchner here in the global wrestling territory. Ox Baker is going to come through. I believe I saw a picture of Eric Embry there at one point. So we're going to cover quite a few guys. Ram Man Johnny Evans.
Johnny was one of the Soul Patrol, I think. Ram Man, and I'm pretty sure he was.
I only know Alex G, but we're going to figure all this out as we go. Like I said, I'm going to do a lot more diving. So, but that's going to wrap it up this week. Lots of great behind-the-scenes business talk, how a penny stock wrestling, the very first ever publicly traded wrestling company, to my knowledge anyway. You guys started that back in the mid-1980s. Unbelievable. So, issuing stock and promoting there in the Florida territory, and we're going to talk all about that. All the great talent that came through there. Some very interesting storylines that you won't see or hear or tell of anywhere else. And so much more in the weeks to come. Bob, thanks so much for doing this with me. I had a blast just kicking off the Global Wrestling Alliance.
Well, thanks, Ray. We're a team, my friend. You're a great tag team partner. I'm really glad to be with you.